So good morning, Mr. Lash. John Lamb Lash. Yeah. I have been listening to your lectures on YouTube, and I am now reading your book not in his image. Probably soon finish the first part, the historical part. And I already have the main picture, the big picture, and I am really fascinated. But I want to point out for you personally one interesting similarity between your theory, between your vision and between your practical life orientation and everything and mystical vision or whatever it is to be felt, that you really are one with that story of the fallen goddess, and it is fantastic, it is good. It is so rare. I have the same approach, and we can agree completely in the realm of the admiration of the planet, of the great mother, of the elements and of the winds and of the skies and seas and lakes and mountains and rivers and oceans. All these elements, I call them the elements or demons in the old pre-Socratic way. As you know, pre-Socratics have explained metaphysically all what there is out of the elements, no? And they have become real friends of mine. I sometimes must confess that I enjoy the loneliness in nature or on biological farms or on expeditions or in sport, because it happens and must happen in the arms of the Great Mother all the time. There are winds, there are trees, there are lakes, there are rocks. Even if I play tennis, which I play passionately, but in a different way than competing for points and winning on hot sand between the white lines like a gladiator. No. I enjoy the wind and the sky and the possibility to see the moon maybe on some days when I surf, and I prefer to play friendly with the partner so that we can dance and we can enjoy the 120 bones and some 600 muscles of our body in best coordination, and the breathing and the perception of the wind on the skin, and the colors and the shapes and the feeling of harmony which arises when you hit the ball harmoniously without power and without an intention to kill the opponent in the corner. So I hope this a little introduction of my elementary metaphysics, or better to say phenomenology, may give you an image of my approach to all these questions. And this certainly, as you are a knower of Nietzsche, and you have finally described in your introduction to your book how you have discovered Nietzsche and how you have loved him reading, and how you have decided to go further than he did. complete his work. That is basically the re-evaluation of all values. No? And as we know, Nietzsche is a moral critic, and you are a knower, an admirer of Nietzsche, so you know that in Human Ode to Human and Twilight of the Idols, he deals with metaphysics very strictly and harshly by proving in his analysis of language that we simply project all our concepts out of our ego into the external world, and our necessity for comprehension and cohesion of those ideas forces us to invent all kinds of systems. No? And naturally, we are both agree in this concept of resentment, of the end of life, of the decadence, and of the roots of Christian and Hebrew metaphysics in a feeling of envy and hate towards life, no? Towards the abundant, beautiful life of the early Europeans, the Minoans and the Etruscans and the Hellenic and the Greek and the early Roman, no? And European, all old nations of Europe. Well, this is all perfectly we agree upon. No? I want to point out one phenomenological mystery and obstacle in all this understanding, which naturally has to do with a detailed analysis of the soul, of the dynamic process of the world perception, feeling, and cognition, basically of representation of the external world into a map of concepts, and the expression of this map of concepts in words. And we are circling around a very difficult but central question. Also, it connects with the question of the origins of evil. No? The biocentric phenomenology, which I really recommend you to read, which is very difficult because it's not translated into English. The origin is only in German. It's Ludwig Klages. The analytical reason, the main work is the analytical reason, or the spirit, or better to say cognitive spirit, as the enemy of the soul. He is the first, and he is also in tradition of Nietzsche, and actually he wrote very much about Nietzsche, and I personally have overcome Nietzsche due to his criticism of him. No? I agree completely with Nietzsche in his moral re-evaluation of the Christian Hebrew tradition, the concept of resentment. I completely agree, the concept of decadence and so, but I agree only 50% in his with his theory of the will to power. Actually, it was yesterday that I have, while listening to your lectures about the white light of Sophia, of the metaphysically, let us say, innate quality of the Sophia, of the Aeon Sophia, I have this intuition that this is, we could call it the will to power of Nietzsche if it is conceived, as he also did partly, as a kind of necessary supra-individual biological power of growth. This is the when Sophia the Aeon is has incorporated, is actually become the growing body of the planet Earth, the Great Mother. And she is also, as you have said, quote unquote scientist, in the sense that she does not predetermine the outcome of the experiment, that she is just letting it go, then it would completely agree with the Nietzsche will to power concept as far as it is conceived as a biological, supra-individual, necessary power which simply unites centers of power, that is to say of life power, that are strong and healthy, and pushes away those centers of power that are weak and decadent. And everything happens necessary, and no one is at controls. No theological system, no personalized gods or whatever that directed to a certain goal. Okay, we are getting closer. You have noticed that I have a different method of imagining, of feeling, of flying around the big questions. I have developed this method which I call the bardic approach with the vibration of the string instruments in the way of the Asian bards of Europe. When the string instrument, in my case it is guitar, is touching the body, and I have a special position of lying down, basically, on my mattress in the mornings, and putting the guitar on my brow with its neck, and sometimes also with its belly, and starting to improvise and enjoying the vibration of the string as it propagates all through the brow and the bones of my head, and maybe the chest and the heart. Not bones, but through the ribs, and then to the inner organs, which naturally induces emotional equivalence of these bodily perceptions, because in the biocentric phenomenology, which I adhere to, life is a unity of body and soul. Okay, body is the expression of the soul, and soul is the software, the morphogenetic field, the meaning of the body, the information. That is why we can then say that purely analytical thinking, which is cold, sharp and exact, and actually rotates only in the realm of a conceptual model of the world, or of some science or whatever, of nature, is an enemy of life, because life is the unity of body and soul, and so there must be always emotional part of whatever you are trying to formulate in words Notice that I have said in words, not in concepts. Now, I'm circling around the big question, but as I've told you, this is a new method. A passive, visionary method which circles around and allows, I would say, the Sophia, the wisdom, the mother, or the Nietzschean will to power, or whatever you call it, the metaphysical driving force of life, to show itself inside the morphogenetic field of the soul of the bard, and at the same time of his body perceptions induced by the vibration of the strings. And so it may divert from the subject if it is felt by the body and by the soul as a necessary detour. Because if we directly attack the problem and want to finish it and show that we are the masters of thinking, of conceptual thinking, then we can become the false Gnostics, those who are driven by the will to power, yet a different will to power as we have so far conceived of it, described it. And Nietzsche has this mistake also. Apart from believing and writing that the will to power is basically a necessary, impersonal, biological driving force, which we have compared with the Sophia, the mother, he also has this personal, historically expressed will to power in individuals, even though he would say they could express it in their own individual egoistic characters in this way, like Julius Caesar did, like Napoleon, and all the big Pericles and the big warriors of the past, only because in their body and in their soul an accumulation has happened of the thousands of generations of this impersonal will to power. But he also says that the great ideologues of the other side, of the dark side, of the enemy of life, and you would call them naturally also the early Christian fathers, had a great will to power, personal will to power. Yet this one was not born from the overflowing cup of thousands of generations of life, but it was born out of envy, out of disease, out of decadence, out of personal suffering even. And so they overturned the values and said, this is the proof that we are the chosen ones because we are suffering. I mean, I'm circling around. I maybe make it to more chapters of this because this is for you, no? Personally, and you can listen to it maybe sometimes as you want to listen to something which is nice, clever, deep, interesting, and honest, and maybe you don't have so many programs to listen to now. And so we should slowly get to the problem. This is also the result. You have said that I've been working for 40 years on this, and I have been working also for some 40 years. And I have been enjoying so much these elements, and sport and skiing, and I'm a physiotherapist and ski teacher, and tennis teacher and an expedition and bike and swimming and table tennis and working on biological farms and enjoying elementary life so much. Then there may have been months and sometimes even half a year when I do not touch on this subject theoretically, but completely immersed in those mountains and rivers and lakes. And I spent always, or very frequently, the whole winter on the island of Crete, which certainly you will immediately notice is one of the strong fortresses of the Great Mother and used to be, and I feel with Ludwig Klages and with Bachofen, that this is the origin of the most beautiful European possibility of the civilization of the Great Mother. I always wondered why it was possible that parallel with the Mycenaean civilization on Crete, where women were priestesses, and then there was such a beauty of everyday life in clothes, in ceramics, in the rituals, and without violence mostly. And that this civilization ran parallel to Egypt, where there was this male-dominated, Ammon priester-dominated culture that had this otherworldly metaphysics, this pyramids like huge graves built to prepare the pharaoh for the journey to Sirius, basically. Maybe there are some connections with your conception of the emanation of the life experiment power into the constellation of Orion that was known to the Egyptian priests. But also it can very quickly turn around into a dark metaphysics, which will then concentrate on the conceptual mysteries of outer space, which is not so far away from the Christian concept of the distant God. And so the split of gnosis into these two directions, as you have rightly criticized, the one which celebrates the Aeon Sophia as a loving mother goddess incarnated in the body of our planet, and the one gnosis, the dark gnosis, which uses the concept of the demiurge as a kind of magician's apprentice who has somehow thwarted the creation process of the one God and let it all fall down to matter, in which we are imprisoned in this planet like in a prison of matter, and we have to work hard under the guidance of the great mystics of gnosis to free our spark, our godly spark, from the clothes of matter from our bodies. This Egyptian story may have guided people like Hancock and stuff like that to divert from the life-supporting, life-celebrating gnosis that you represent. So this is the deviation from what I have said about Crete, my second home. And I have a lot of videos that you can look at, which basically were produced in those many years where I did not yet have such a complex understanding of what I'm doing, but I was simply drawn into the beauty of the mother. And I will just tell you personally, just a hint of my main motivation for all this, which I may then tell you personally one day, that it was from Crete that in the year 2003, I was taken on a vision journey without psychedelic drugs, just by, living in the embracement of the mother for months and months in a row in the winter, which is spring there, and on the shore of the sea, I have been taken on a mystical journey by, I would say, the Great Mother herself into the center of the galaxies. And I have been describing this journey since 20 years. I always stop for a few years and then I read it and I'm fascinated and I improve and I try to stay as much as possible absolutely to what really happened. Nah? And I will tell you this because it is so important that it cannot be communicated via this internet. And what mainly surprised me, that I have never found a similar description in all kinds of, mystical literature and beautiful literature and films and stories and whatever production of human beings on this planet until I have heard your story. So this gives me the nice motivation to talk to you. So back to the several aspects we have here, several perspectives. We are circling around the big problem, the origins of evil in the human soul. You notice that I always say soul, I never say mind, because I come from a German tradition of ontology and gnoseology mainly, and noetics, which has a great advantage against the Anglo-Saxon language, which has this terrible monster word mind, which can be anything. And this maybe leads all sorts of mystics and philosophers and scientists, neurophysiologists and so that are born into an English language to confuse the concepts with phenomenal reality and with elemental reality. Germany, in tradition of biocentric phenomenology of Ludwig Klages, we sharply differentiate between the words soul, Seele, Leib, body, and Geist, which means analytical reason and all derivation of cognition. So let's get to the chase, as you say. What we have learned so far. The method of the bard is this, what you know here. It follows the advice of Nietzsche that the methods are the last parts that change when a paradigm is at the end. The paradigm of analytical reasoning in philosophy, religion, science has ruled the minds of Europeans and the derivations then in the New World since early Hellenic period. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and all the big philosophers of Greece around their time. They have made a kind of matrix of possible variations of thinking in concepts and explaining man and nature and cosmos. And since that time we have had variations of it. The mystics always were different. They drink some psychedelic drugs and they dance and they shout and they will make music and they get into rapture and ecstasy, and then they experience images, emotions, and then in the arms of the Great Mother they go on a journey somewhere, and then they try to describe it. When they come back and when they are able to describe it, and then usually they fall into conceptual thinking again, or some of them become poets, which is better, which is close to what they experience because they use metaphors and symbols, because the experience they had cannot be reduced into conceptual thinking. And as you have said, your concept of gnosis is intellectual gnosis. So I've just heard yesterday that you have said that the so-called primitive nations of Europe and all around the planet certainly were in touch with the Great Mother, Sophia and with nature. But they simply experienced it, and that was enough. And then they didn't make science. They didn't talk about it in concepts. And this is what you want, an intellectual gnosis. It is similar to the project of Ludwig Klages and of Nietzsche, who use sharp analytical reason in the interest of life, not to lose themselves in some conceptual labyrinth of science, philosophy, and get a position in university or government or business and military, whatever, by the fact that they make it possible for power to control the world, or knowledge to control the minds of students. No, they have separated themselves from the university life or some spiritual institutions, or governments or whatever, and they followed the call of the Great Mother, and they devoted their whole life to explaining in reasonable concept that which is actually not explainable completely. They were circling around it. I call it a life-supporting metaphysics, gnosis. He would call it din. And this comes to another very important discovery I have made. I have followed the steps of Rudolf Steiner and Ludwig Klages and Martin Heidegger and Nietzsche, and to formulate this knowledge about the two faces of words. Words are sounds that we use to express our soul, let us say, and later to describe the external world be it scientific, philosophical, political, moral, or whatever. But words are sounds, and they can be used in two ways. They can name our phenomenal experiences, or they can be used as signs for abstract concepts, and this is fundamentally different. And this confuses all thinkers or professional thinkers, because they basically do not master their instruments of thinking, which is language, which is words and syntax and semantics and so on. La, 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 la. That's why all great thinkers, like Nietzsche, was a philologist. He was a theoretician of grammar, language, translation, and so on. For 10 years in Basel, he was teaching this art of interpreting text from old languages. Martin Heidegger is a great linguist also, who has developed his own way of naming the being, the visions he had in the Black Forest here in Germany where he lived, while walking in the woods and getting closer and closer to this realm of Zen Buddhism, basically, of this immediate perception without concepts. He called it the Lichtung, the meadow or in the woods where you suddenly came and there were no concepts. There was this satori, the immediate phenomenal perceptions without interpretation. Whoa. And then he returned back and wrote big books about it. He called it the contact with being. And he very well understood that it is a passive phenomenon, that the being turns its face to you and you cannot force it. And this basically is, if you are like a baby in the arms of the great mother, she loves you and she gives you what you need, and you cannot stand up and shout and say, I want pudding now, because you actually don't have any words yet. You don't even differentiate between you, your ego, pudding, and mother, and causality, and so on. That's why Heidegger was translated 6 times, originally by Zen masters in Japan, where you have lived, because they felt his language is getting close to what we describe by this satori experience. So all great discoverers of the secrets of the mystery of modern time, mystery cults of the modern time, we would call them linguistics, because all human orientation and communication happens in language. And if you don't understand your instrument, you will make mistakes. This is like a carpenter who would say, I'm going to make a table, and he would never study the individual instruments, like how to cut the wood, how to polish it, how to measure, and so on. Okay, so that's why, my strain is also linguistics. I have a master in linguistics in German university, and I concentrated on the Sapir and Whorf determination thesis at those times, which is a great contribution of the American linguists Sapir and Whorf, who have studied the languages of Aborigines and, let us say, in indigenous cultures in American Indians, not the Hopis and others. And I was fascinated when I studied in detail grammar of, let us say, the reconstructed grammar of the Hopi or of Chinese, to see that this is a very different structuring of the world. Because our, as Nietzsche points out, our nouns in Indo-European languages, they simply hypnotize us to suppose that there must be these things. If there is a noun for it, and there must be these qualities of the things, if then there we have these adjectives, and then there must be these causal relationships between the things, if there is a syntactical structure and so on. So grammar is basically a prison into which you are thrown as a non-speaking animal, a baby, and all around you people are speaking all the time. You hear noises, you live in a kind of perceptual impressionistic soup, and suddenly, slowly, you must you watch this soup and you connect it with some names, some sounds, and slowly this soup becomes reduced and congeals into objects and processes. Among them, this is forced onto your soul by the ruling power of grammar. Dun, dun. You have no choice. You are a helpless, soft animal, baby thrown into a speaking culture of human grown-ups. So you could think that even this instrument could be really used by the achrons, what you call them, I think, achron, the dark origin of evil, to manipulate it somehow, or to imprison the human soul in the conceptual world by not allowing children to live through the early phase of childhood without having to think in concepts, without having to name their experiences exactly in the classroom, without letting them to flow in the woods, in the meadows, in the rivers, just by, feeling it and not having names for it all the time. And you see it in the present day agenda. You simply put a mask on the face of a child and say, stay home and look into the computer and mark questions, multiple choice to that. Mark the answers. Yeah? This is education. This is a murder of the soul and body. You see why the bardic method of Heros Pavlos, as I call myself in my artistic name, change of position, May the 2nd. I have changed position, putting the guitar now directly with its resonance body on my brow, with the neck pointed down, and my both elbows are supported by cushions, and one with a lion. I have a favorite toy lion made of soft, beautiful material, and I use him as a kind of symbolic Heraclean support on these journeys with Iason, Orpheus, and Heracles into the mysteries of language, the soul, the cosmos, the mother Gaia, and so on. Because, as you may see some of my with those from Crete last years, then I have this concept of the new Argonauts, visions of the new Argonauts. We should start sailing from the south coast of Crete, there where I have my temple, and go to Iria Petra, and go then north through the Aegean Islands to Caucasus. I have this strange vision, and it's drawing me that, and when we then disembark on the south coast of Black Sea, after we pass Bosporus and in Istanbul, and we get on horses or bicycles, and then go to Caucasus, that we shall pass the land of Amazons. And Amazons were warrior female priestesses that have understood finally, unfortunately, that there will be no peace between the old mother culture and the new patriarchal Indo-European invasion from Asia, basically. Because all the Europeans come from present-day Russia, somewhere between the Baikal Sea and Ural Mountains, even though there are some Indo-Europeans that come from the Danube Delta and the present-day Romania, as you have already pointed out, who are different to that more Mongolian-styled Asian. No, never forget. So, let's go back to the big questions. So, this is it. The knowledge of language as a barrier to wisdom. And the art of distinguishing between naming your true, original, phenomenal experiences, or to label abstract signs, abstract concepts in a systematic science, systematic religion, and politics and morals, whatever. And this, unfortunately, is the dominant method of education and of gaining power and earning money in present day on this planet at the present time. So the knowledge of language. Then we come to the big question of origins of evil. What I like very much in your model is the recognition that there is only one source, the Mother Sophia Aeon projects her creative energy into the arms of galaxies with these two steps now, which I yet not understand perfectly. It starts in Orion. Well, now I feel I understand it. This is the usual way it's being done, okay, by the other aeons. They projected it somewhere to a suitable part of the galactic arm, and then they let it go. It will settle down with the panspermia theory. The germs of life will settle on some planets. But Mother Sophia Gaia loved the earth so much, loved her experiment with this, let us say. We cannot say she loved earth because there was no earth before her. She loved this concept of You could say in human terms of understanding herself or living to a deeper and larger quality of herself, this concept of materializing, of descending, and the word falling is, I think, not so good now, because it already indicates the direction in which the false gnosis will go, that it was a fall, and if somebody is falling, it probably may be that somebody threw him down, and you already have this concept of the falling of Lucifer, no? And this quarreling bunch of male gods and aeons who are quarreling and throwing somebody down, and then it gets wrong, and then the demiurge and the suffering and all the software falls down into this terrible matter, and we are imprisoned in a body. This body, as Nietzsche was pointing out, the Platonic and idealistic philosophy always has the trouble with the body, you know, that pretends to be real, should be done away with. So gnosis of the destructive, life-hating kind and idealistic philosophy are close to each other, no? No, Mother Sophia Gaia, we can think about her, and actually she appeared to me in this incarnation as a beautiful, loving girl, young woman. Because we know from Magna Mater of Ludwig Klages and Bachhofen that the concept of the Great Mother includes all kinds of female age stages. She can be a daughter, she can be a mother, she can be a lover, whatever. Because she's a principle of life. So she can appear to men who love her on this planet, always in the kind of suitable variation. To an old wise man, she can appear as a daughter. To a young boy, she can appear as a loving mother. And to a man in his best age, she can appear as a perfect lover. And so she loved so much this possibility of being all that, of being a countless number of children that are loved by their parents, of countless numbers of females that are loved by their husbands, lovers and poets and romantics, and a countless number of old grandmas that are looking wisely at her descendants, at the family, and are trying to somehow beware and protect them from evil. That is, we are coming to the big question, no? So that Mother Gaia, Sophia, the lover and daughter, she simply incarnated, so she materialized into the earth planet completely in one beam of, energy and their original form and quality from the pleroma, from the center of the galaxies, where incidentally I was walking with her 2003 circles of the planet Earth around the Sun since the so-called beginning of Christian time calendar. Okay, so now let's get to the serious stuff. And you have pointed out that the creation, and not the creation, there is no creation in this concept. This is a Nietzschean necessity. Everything happens as it happens because it must. There is no other way. So this kind of immediate descent, let us say, not fall. She was not thrown by the other aeons down. She simply loved this possibility of experiencing herself in so many aspects of life that she was like a scientist in the laboratory, as you have pointed out, who so much loves the experiment that he cannot stay behind the glass of the laboratory, simply injects himself with his creation. If it is a life-supporting creation, if a scientist would invent some medicine that really heals a certain disease without side effects, he would love his creation so much, and if he would himself be motivated by his disease, he would naturally inject himself with loving ecstasy to become one with his gnosis. So that is why we are injected with our love of the Great Mother. And that's why I have been forced to find this method of bardic devotion, because it always opens the doors to the temple of the Great Mother, no matter how realistic and mechanic or conceptual and scientific and full of sorrow and problems the so-called objective reality may be. Because we are all infected by the achrons, as you have pointed out. And this is what I like in your theory, because it is in congruence with the theory of Ludwig Klages. Nietzsche didn't have any theory like that, because he was cosmologically not interested. His interest in cosmology was somehow to exemplify and support his moral teachings, his moral criticism. So even his theory of time and the eternal return has a kind of force power in connection with his moral theory. How should we live? If we are to live forever, the repetition and exact repetition of what we live now, this is the theory of the eternal return, then we should really start to live like heroes so that we can enjoy it, and not to live like, worms crawling down on the earth, pressed down by some false metaphysics. But apart from that and other ideas, Nietzsche didn't work in the field of cosmology, or only in he had a short script about good and evil from the extra moral perspective, from the perspective beyond moral, where he has a certain deterministic, pessimistic picture which says somewhere in an arm of a galaxy on some planet, apes started to think and imagine and create, and it took some million years. They created a civilization, culture, and then it ended, and nobody noticed that. This is a very pessimistic perspective. There are no creation mothers, aeons, and stuff like that. Ludwig Klages is one of the few deep thinkers and knowers of Nietzsche who has pointed out that in Nietzsche, two archetypes were clinched in a relentless war, and that is, in his soul, the archetype of Yahweh and the archetype of Dionysus, which is a deadly combination. And Klages, he's the founder of graphology, the art of analyzing the script of a person, a spontaneous script, to reveal the structure of his character. And he has done this with Nietzsche's script and comes to the conclusion that Nietzsche was suffering under frequent impulses for suicide, to suicide, because these two archetypes are mortal enemies. You could call it, in your theory, it was Yahweh is the patriarchal, Hebrew, monotheistic, otherworldly God figure that wants to get control of life in conceptual terms with power and violence, and he relentlessly kills off, or those people who believe him, kill off all other men and women and children, as is described in the Old Testament. And Dionysus is the wine-drinking, dancing, life-enjoying, everybody-loving God who rides on his beautiful carriage drawn by panthers and dancing bacchantes or whatever. And in this rapture of, in the overflowing cup of life power, he loves everybody because he wants everybody to enjoy in this life power. So, and when they do meet, so everybody, every one of them too, each of them absolutely hates the other. Dionysus would simply probably not notice the hateful, greenish, envious eye of the servants of Yahweh, because he would be in his ecstasy of life power. And that's why Nietzsche points out very correctly, and this may be the explanation, why do we lose so frequently in this 2,000 or 3,000, 5,000 year old struggle with the life destroying power? Because the life destroying power, or the souls and characters of men who are decadent, who do not enjoy life, the intellectual power is greater, because they must look at the beautiful and strong and creative one and enjoying one and laughing children and running animals and flying birds and strong winds and mountains and beautiful seas and the night starry sky, and they feel excluded from all this. This is terrible. That no wonder that they invent a theory that this is a fallen world, this matter, all of this life around us is evil. It is a fall. We have fallen from a much better world where we were strong and beautiful and full of energy, and so we must get out. And so far it would be good if they would say, okay, Nietzsche has this advice also, do away with you if you have such desire to get away. One step more, and remove yourself. And Kurt Vonnegut is also somebody who got close, but he found out another way. He found out the way in absurd humor in his novels. No? He says, if somebody has this kind of approach to life, the best he can do is to get himself somewhere into a forgotten corner and do nothing, so that he does not do any damage. That is a great success. No? Okay, so back to this Dionysus and Yahweh. So Dionysus, if he was confronted with Yahweh, would probably extend a cup of wine to him and say, stop worrying, and why do you look so angry and dark? And atheist, drink and dance. This is the problem why the life-supporting men and women who enjoyed life are frequently cheated and destroyed by those schematists, this poison kind of withdrawn and thinking and combining and enemies of life, because they have much more time and energy to scheme and prepare, whereas Nietzsche has another metaphor. He says eagles attack directly without worrying what would happen if they don't hit the goal. No? And a beautiful, strong warrior king at the head of his army attacking head on. It's a fantastic, powerful example of the life force. No? But if he comes against the machine guns, as we have seen in the film like The Last Samurai, no? Then this is another example of the clever, mechanically advanced, conceptually thinking, analytical reason, using the body of the Mother Gaia to excavate resources, raw materials, and to work on them in laboratories under the guidance of the great Anglo-Saxon philosophers like Bacon and John Locke. No? This is the beginning of the great attack on life in English empiricism. Bacon, you have to put Mother Nature in your laboratory. You have to put her on torturing instruments and erase the pressure, heat it, okay, and put some chemical, strong substances on her body and cut it and inject the eyes of the rabbits with chemistry and whatever, and see what happened. Take it apart into the last components, as Rupert Sheldrake, who is also very integral in our worldview, with Ludwig Klages, Nietzsche, Heidegger, Klages, Rudolf Steiner, and Krishnamurti, and Rupert Sheldrake with the theory of morphogenesis, and now also John Lash with his Gaia, Mother Sophia. Vision. So Bacon 16th century or the 17th century, after Renaissance in England, torturing mother. And Rupert Sheldrake points out very correctly that he was studying biology, and it became absurd for him that he has to kill living organisms to understand how they function. This is the old mistake of analytical reason. And Nietzsche has already pointed out the deepest, let us say, phenomenal roots of it. We project, or the analytical reason and the ego projects itself into everything, creating substances, qualities of the substances, and relations between the substances, causality. And we can understand only that which we actually invented ourselves. This is logical now. So there is no free science, conceptually free science. Even in CERN, they have a theoretical idea of what matter is in its deepest structure, and according to these ideas, preconceived conceptual models, they construct the machinery, all those millions of steps in between computer and mechanic and electric and electromagnetic, and then separated from mother matter through these millions of machines, they test it, and then they get translations of reactions between those various steps of matter machines, and finally there is a blob on the screen, and they all stand up and shout and drink coffee and shout, "We have found the hadron," or another secret part the mother matter didn't want to show us. Now we understand. And basically, now we get the money to, because it's billions of dollars are pushed into these projects. Finally, you must come to the conclusion, as Nietzsche says, I'm walking through the cities of Europe as through a madhouse, the whole planet. Apart from those farmers and handcraftsmen and artists and aborigines and native folks who simply live by supporting themselves everyday life and creating some life-supporting art and handcraft and farming. All the rest is an open psychiatry. People are mad, Nietzsche would point out, living in their own projections. But this is a deep core of this problem, is that we can understand in concepts only that we have projected to the outside world, even to the outside in the meaning of, if you make a model of our own psyche, we can understand it only if we first conceptualize it and then project this concept to this abstract realm and say, there it is as a real thing, or as a functioning archetype, or as a atom, or as a chemical reaction. That it functions, that the airplanes are flying and the cars are moving, and steel is being produced and bullets are flying and killing people. That is true, because a certain amount of the matter of the body of the mother Gaia can be analyzed in this way and can be, processed in the laboratories and the factories and in the research institutes in a way that it will be devoid of life. The life will be removed, the life force, the mother Sophia will be pushed out of her body, and then the rest will be polished and pressed and put together into machinery that will function on this planet and will slowly destroy life. Yeah? And Mother Sophia, what she's doing, she's a true scientist in the positive sense of the word, that he says, okay, or she says, okay, this is my experiment. It is working like that. I don't have a preconceived outcome. I am not a teleologician, that I don't have a telos. I don't have a attractor. Well, the attractor is a different, maybe, concept, like Terence McKenna, who is also integral to our theory, and you like him also. Terence McKenna talk about attractors. Something which may be connected with your Gaia Sophia correction. The concept, let's first finish the one idea, one image. So Sophia didn't have a telos, the last judgment, the patriarchal, summing up and looking into your files and saying you did this and you did that, and moral, evaluation of all that, and did you pay enough to your priests, and did you have some interests in the bank of good deeds, and so now you will be evaluated and you will go to heaven or hell. This is basically again a projection of a businessman, of somebody who's counting money on the market and lending money, and so he can invent only such a metaphysics. Nietzsche has a very nice, I don't know if it is Nietzsche, because sometimes I have my own visions and they happen while I read Nietzsche, so I think he wrote that. So I push this to people's ears by saying it is Nietzsche's idea, that when during the wandering in the desert, the Hebrew slaves that ran away from Egypt, were almost finished. They were really dead. They had no food, and they were lost, and they could not survive. And then these masters, their leaders, were sitting in a tent and were in a very serious mood, very pessimistic and very worrying and asking themselves, shouldn't we return back to Egypt or to some other slavery, because you see, seems not so good for us. We die here physically, and isn't it better to be, a slave, in the sense that you are being taken care of, because slavery in antiquity was not always so terrible as it was then criticized, no? Because the slaves were simply instruments that a good lord would take care of so that they function, and he would not be destroying them. So, and then they notice somebody who is really at the end of his life power, and he goes mad, fully mad, and he runs around and shouts that he sees the prophets and he sees Messiah coming, and he is descending, and this is going to, everything is going to be well, because they have endured so much, and that was a test, and this person, unfortunately, was completely schizophrenic and delusional. But it helped him. It helped him. This is the Nietzsche's concept that whatever expression there is, even in the souls and bodies of those decadent ones, nevertheless is expression of a life force that is desperately trying to survive. Even madness, even a metaphysics that is life destroying for the short period in which this organism is producing it and living according to it, has this strange effect that the organism survives. Terrible, no? This leads Nietzsche to the idea that error is necessary for life. No? Basically, because a small organic being with a reduced nervous system which cannot perceive the complexity of all electromagnetic radiation of the universe and cannot conceptualize this big space, must make always only approximations about the big picture. No? And that is, he will always make an approximation from a certain perspective of somebody who has the whole picture is always a mistake. Some of the mistakes are really destructive, and they lead to the destruction of the one who has made this approximation. Some of the approximations are lucky strokes of fate, and they function well. Okay, but nevertheless, all of them are desperate attempts of the reduced and decadent and dying life force to survive. That's why he does not have a kind of evil eye on all those who make these big mistakes, and even if an ideology and religion and philosophy and politics arises out of that, he has the eye of a doctor, of a psychiatrist. He says, these people have no choice. Don't punish them for that what they do, because they are not responsible. Difficult idea, because it is not yes, this is true. You can voice this kind of tolerance only if you have this Nietzschean metaphysics. If you have a metaphysics as you have, Mr. Lash, that there is this Aeon Mother who loves our planet, and she is the planet, and the destruction of the planet is the killing of the mother, then we cannot simply, look at it and say, well, so what? This is a necessary expression of life. That is decadent. If the expression of life is, in fact, death, then there is something wrong in this metaphysics, okay? And we have to fight against it, at least by understanding it, and hoping that the Great Mother, Gaia, Sophia, her body, the earth itself, will make a correction, as you say. Well, back to this picture of those, crazy, schizophrenic, delusional Hebrew in the desert who shouts, and as we have pointed out, saves his own personal life by falling as a victim to his own delusion. It makes him go on. The masters, thinkers, the rabbis that sit in the tent look at him And one of them is very clever, intelligent. And he says, look, this is the way. He shows us the way. He could be even less clever and say, this is the message of our God. Like this, we have to live. If he is slightly more clever, he says, well, this man is crazy, but it functions. It can save us. Let's do it. So they have a meeting. He explains this to them, and they, the burning fire of vision lights in their eyes. The fanatic eye starts to glow, and they go out from the tent, and they sing and proclaim the new way. This is true. This is a prophet. He is telling us what to do. The message, the voice of God has spoken. We are chosen. We have been suffering so far because it was a test of our God. We have proved worthy, and now we shall inherit the earth. We shall be the king of the earth. Well, this in a moment where there is such a desperation, this will function 100%, man. And don't be angry, because it is the same when you fall in love. Even in the present day time, when boys and girls fall in love, they never see, and they should not, the lover as he really is. This would not spark this divine devotion, this madness. Actually, with young people, it is driven by the sexual power also. But even if it is a kind of romantic love, you don't see the lover as he really is. And this is the source of this love, because he becomes the ideal prince and the ideal princess and the hero and the goddess and so on. And this is a life-supporting mistake, error, approximation, illusion, life-supporting. And the mistake of the Hebrews in the desert was also life-supporting. And the difference is that one of the life was decadent, dying, and the other, the lover who projects the image of his beloved, is young and strong, and it can really lead to a happy union and to a procreation. So now what we have to say? We have to come to the big problem of evil, as it is in the theory of John Lash, a byproduct of this exceptional desire of the scientist Aeon, Sophia, to become one with her creation. She could be seen in this perspective as a kind of progressive Aeon. She does not want to continue this billions and billions of years of creating process from the center of galaxy, where we simply project something somewhere, and genome of a certain race or organism, and then let it grow as it grows. And what do we do then? The great problem comes for the aeons, less like from any other superpower. What do we do in the spare time? Then we simply don't see what happens with our creation. Nietzsche points out that in the Greek cosmology, after the Titans, the Olympic god comes, and they create human beings, us, because for aesthetic reasons. Because they also feel bored in their perfection all the time, sitting there and ruling being immortal and all the time healthy, there is no problem. So let us create a man according to our image, but not so perfect. So that he makes mistakes and he makes wars and art and science, and sometimes we can enjoy our trip now down to the human realm, and we shall get involved. It will be a great workshop. It will be a great holiday for us from this perfect boredom in the Olymp. Okay. So Gaia, Mother Sophia, could be say, even though as a kind of hippie aeon, she sits down on the Harley motorcycle with a kind of hippie and she rides on, easy rider. He rides on into the arms of the galaxy and say, well, I don't want to do this anymore. It's all the time the same for billions of years. I will embody. Similar to what a young boy may think. It was just in gymnasium, in his high school, and okay, now I have had my final examination, and my papa is going to help me and buy me a car, and I will start a job or study on in the university. And then he suddenly looks at his parents and says, well, and I'm going to finish in this house next or the other city with the same house and do the same stuff? No. I'll get the backpack and I get the last money and I fly to India. I'll go to Hindu Kush. I will search for the riches and I will find wisdom. Oh, it was, or in the present days, it would be like, I get on the bicycle and I punch in the computer, work away Infocom or whatever, and I get working on the farm somewhere for at least 1 year. I shall travel through the States and Europe and whatever, Asia, working on various projects and farms and see the world. I will become one with the external reality, which so far is only in my computer now as an imagination. So maybe Gaia Sophia was like that. And she became one with this planet. She became this planet. She morphed, as you say. Morphic. Morpho is the form. No? Morphogenetic is the creation, the growing of the form. So the morphogenetic field of Mother Sophia Gaia expressed itself and expresses itself dynamically, continuously in the body of the planet Earth. In all organisms, in all elements, in all rivers, lakes, mountains, brooks, and in all winds, and also in man. And in the deep core and the deep depth of the planet, but we have no idea what's happening there. Incidentally, it is the hope of Ludwig Klages, this is his Gaia correction, after he comes to this pessimistic conclusion that in your language, the infect diseased ahrons that have invaded the human soul and have changed it into a kind of life-destroying faculty that is creating science, abstract models of the biosphere, abstract models of matter and life that are by Nietzsche definition, approximation, mistakes, and by that technology, which is in the last 100 years, let us say, built upon these scientific approximations and these mistakes, these machines will destroy the planetary life. atomic bombs and the genetic manipulation. And you already have the transhumanist agenda, as you rightly criticize, as the last expression of the achrons in the present time, enemies of life. Okay, and Ludwig Klages comes to the same conclusion. He doesn't need some of your concept, but he comes to the same conclusion. And his last hope is the deep core of the planet Earth. We do not know what kind of forces and morphogenetic fields are, growing and connecting and disconnecting in the deep core that is the soul of Mother Gaia. In those realms where the human effect cannot be felt, that is the deep strata of the Mother Earth, they will have an answer. They will have an answer. This is the last hope. My last hope is also the sun, because I am, as you, an intellectual gnostic, and so the archetype of Apollo or Serapis is still somehow glowing, this glorious ray of the sun creation is also present in my vision, that according to the Orphic, you see, we are the Argonauts. There is Orpheus, there is Jason, the adventurer, there is Heracles, the sportsman, the strong one, and Orpheus, the artist who can even cheat death, not by fighting it, but by, performing such beautiful music in the depths of the Tartaros that the daughter of Demeter, I forgot the name now, who is the first wife of Hades, suddenly, admires his music and admires his devotion to Eurydice, that he descends to the death realm because of love. And we can think about Persephone, the daughter of Demeter, the first wife of Hades, for half a year old, that she may be also touched by Sophia, the mother. She will be naturally all the female goddesses of all religions will be an incarnation of Mother Gaia Sophia, and she will feel this. This is what she came for. This is what she wanted to experience. It happened without a plan. She didn't plan it. She's a scientist of really open type. She says, okay, let it happen. But when it happens, I will take part, because this is why I am here. I will not stand apart. This is what I enjoy. The same like the girls in the 60s who get on a bicycle and drive with easy riders to some, adventure. They smoke a joint. They don't want to make a scientific investigation of this subculture like modern psychologists, emancipated gender specialists would do. No, they go in. And so Persephone takes part and says, no, I am not going to be your wife, Hades, if you don't free Eurydice, because this is what I admire, and you are not capable of this love which Orpheus is showing. And Hades has no choice. Before having trouble in his kingdom forever, he frees your Nietzsche. So this is it. This is the Gaia Sophia correction, as you call it, takes for active participation. We do not know what's going to happen, but when it happens, and we feel that it's calling us, then we must jump in like Dionysus and enjoy this trip and have this great wisdom we have collected 2,000, 3,000 years after it had started. And in a way, your work is this creative gnosis on the road. This is being on the road. This is Kerouac gnosis. Well, what do we have now here in our mandala? What has been collected in this mandala? What collected itself? What morphed itself? What incarnated itself into this mandala? We have this, your big idea that the creation of no, there's no creation. That the occurrence of so-called evil is a necessary byproduct of this thrust of the desire to experience herself fully, which made Gaia Sophia to project her light energy, her software, her soul into the place in which planet Earth was born. And it went through all the stages that our scientists and evolutionary and cosmologists have found out. Okay, so creation of the growth of the planet and life forming and all the stages of life till present is what Gaia Mother Sophia wanted to experience. This was a great trip. This was her. This was a joint marijuana 4 billion years long. I mean, by this process, all the plants were created. Even then, the psychedelic plants. But the byproduct was the occurrence, the self-arousal, a kind of, if you throw a stone into a clear pond, there will be side effects. And the side effects, the countercurrents, are that what you call the acrons, the acrons. This kind of extraterrestrial, mechanistic things. We cannot say organisms because they are mechanistic, that function as viruses that can invade a human soul field. Now, this is a slightly difficult part of your metaphysics because where is the transition of the mechanistic, robotic-like body into this moment when they infect, like software viruses, the human mind? Maybe this describing them as extraterrestrial and robotic-like and mechanic is just a metaphor to point out the difference from the life-supporting energy of Sophia Gaia. Now, this is also a big point which makes me like your theory, because in Klages' theory, and it is the only one I have found so far, apart from Nietzsche, Nietzsche has evil transcended. He has transcended the concept of evil, naturally, beyond good and evil. One of his basic works. he does not have any metaphysical opposition in his theory. It is all one continuum. It is the life force by Nietzsche that is either strong, young, healthy, overflowing, and then it creates somehow in its development morals that are the so-called the moral of the lords, of the heroes, of the strong ones, that don't even have the concept of evil. They have the concept of good, because this is what they do. No? Whatever they do is good, because it's a kind of ecstasy of expression, life, power. It tastes good. And if they encounter somebody who is not so good, because he's weak, ill, frustrated, depressed, melancholic, they say, well, this is bad for us. We don't care about him, because we don't have time for that. We have to go for expeditions and play tennis and swim and, make these beautiful songs and dance and look at the beautiful girls and make tournaments and fans and eat well. And then next day we go on to Caucasus and board on the ships and raise the blue and dark and red sails and feel the strong wind and on our shoulders and the sun. I don't have time to worry about those, who are ill and weak and I don't care. This is the morals of a hero, which has only two values. Good, this is what I do. I have no other choice. And I don't do that which the others do. The weak ones, I call it simply, this is bad for me. Okay, the weak ones, the decadent ones, as Nietzsche points out in the genealogy of morals, have a different approach of this. They are envious, basically, because they are excluded, as you say, from this all passionate embracement of life. And they look at those who do it, and they first, an envious impulse is say, this, what they do, is evil. They cannot say it's bad. This is not enough. This is not strong enough. Because if they said, this is bad, what they do, this is bad, and that what we do, what it is? Well, shit, this is even worse. Well, terrible to have the variation between bad and worse. Well, you cannot live with that. This is exactly as the Hebrew prophets in this kind of metaphorical tent sitting in the desert also had the choice between, what the Egyptians do, who have expelled us, this is certainly morally bad. And what we do, it's even worse. Shit! He died here and then applies this Nietzschean metaphor of the apes that have started to, think for some time, and then they died out, and this is it. Nobody cares. No, this was not possible. So first we start by designating that what the others do not as bad but as evil. And this implies already that we have some higher standard. We have the standard bad. We have we have lowered the standard bad into evil, and our standard automatically rises up as good. Evil and good. And so Nietzsche points very well that the origin of the slave morality is on the other pole. It does not stem from what you do. It stems from what you are watching that the others are doing, and you label it evil so that you can criticize it. Because if you have evil and good, then certainly you must have somebody who knows what the difference is. And the difference will be decided by the super mundane, immortal, all-knowing, and all-controlling God, which at the moment then becomes the friend of those ones who are oppressed, and he will punish the evil ones because this is his agenda. Okay, so this is it. Nietzsche does not have this metaphysical opposition. He says both of them, he can explain it, how it became, but he can also make a kind of medical analysis of it and says, okay, both of them are expression of life force. No? The one is naturally okay. This is the beautiful time of the Mycenaean and the Minoan and all the native cultures on the planet Earth and early Hellenic, and all the time in all epochs, individuals or even small circles will be born, will arise that enjoy this life. They simply enjoy life, okay? They don't care about the rest. And then there will be the weak ones, the decadent ones, the dying parts of the races that will invent this resentment morals, good and evil morals, but nevertheless it will save them from immediate, pessimism and depression and suicide. So it is also a expression of a desire to live longer, even though we are ill, weak, and decadent. And that makes Nietzsche very humanistic, actually, because he says, don't punish them and don't pity them even, because you cannot do anything, but, don't care about them. Put 7 mountains and 7 rivers and 7 valleys between you and the decadent ones, because you are bringing the human race forward. There is hope in you and your children and your lifestyle. Separate yourself from the decadent ones. This was his answer. And he did it by himself, running in the mountains in Switzerland and walking along the lakes and rivers and oceans and having his great ecstasies of wisdom. But he also was very ill, and he would lie like months and have terrible headaches and almost get blind and so be weak. But his specialty was, that's why he accepted that he is half decadent and half Superman, that in the phases of illness, he nevertheless had a very clear mind. As a, let's say, intellectual capacity. His soul was suddenly stricken by the illness of the body. He didn't feel well. His soul, the morphogenetic field of his soul was also, weakened. But somehow his intellectual power was clear. And this makes him exceptional. In our terms of a biocentric phenomenology, all cognitive functions are derivations of the morphogenetic field of the soul. So far I adhere to this theory of Ludwig Klages. Nobody has persuaded me that it would be otherwise. So I have to explain everything in this model, as long as I don't get another one that persuades me. So, and this would say that Nietzsche's soul was nevertheless of such a quality that his body must have been exceptionally healthy in those periods where he really was completely healthy, so that there was a kind of a shadow of it and transference did his soul field manage, even in the time of physical illness, to, and let us say in our words that we have already found, to name his visions and his experiences that he remembered, name them correctly. Don't lose himself in some hopeful metaphysical creations of religions and, wonder and mysticism, that this will help me, the distant gods and whatever, Brahma and some strange Gnostic realms of other worlds will help me, and they would help him. They would help him to survive the disease. But then he would come out and say, shit, no, I was dreaming. But nevertheless, he would not criticize himself. He would accept it and say, this was necessary. A heretic idea, Mr. Lash, is that you are honest person, so you will not be angry. That sometimes I was feeling like, in Nietzsche, when he comes down from the ladder of metaphysics, he said, in human all to human. Many have been so high as I have been, and have seen through all the religions and all the metaphysics and all the philosophy of science that is a necessary error. And some of them are lucky, okay, and we should not be angry and live them, especially in our personal life, if we are going to criticize ourselves all the time for the necessary errors. We should not, play a good backhand and forehand and have not enjoy our food and don't fall in love and be creative. But if we are on this level of, scientific analysis of everything, and we see through everything, we should not stay on this height forever. This will drain our soul. We have to hurry up down from this height and embrace another metaphysics, which will give us again this dreamy power of a vision for some time. My professor of literary sciences, who is a great mind here in the University of Konstanz, Germany, in the 1980s, Professor Wolfgang Iser. If you punch Wolfgang Iser, I-S-E-R, into Google, you will find endless pages, and because he was always teaching one semester in the United States and one semester here in Germany. And he is the creator of the so-called Wirkungsästhetik, phenomenology of reading, which was searching for this almost impossible task to understand the flow of phenomenal experiences in the soul of a reader. And he would have the theory that reading novels or art of literature is the kind of, yes, I say, intellectual gnosis in your terms. It is an ongoing Sophia Gaia expression, especially on the thresholds of epochs like Middle Ages to Renaissance, or Minoan time to pre-Hellenic, and then end of rationalism to romantic, and end of modern time to postmodernity. the paradigm is at the end, and the sensitive souls and bodies feel it, and they search. They are forced to find another paradigm, another error, but a functional error. My professor called them fictions of medium range validity. So we need another fiction, something which is, fiction is not an illusion, it is not reality, it is something in between, but it has an effect, Wirkung in German. My second grade thinker, Ludwig Klages, talks about phenomenology as Wirkungswissenschaft, that is, science of effects. What does it do with your soul? Okay, so these fictions of medium range validity on the threshold of an epoch would be probed about in a fictitious modus, sometime before it becomes necessary, sometimes before it becomes a necessity for all human beings to change the paradigm, otherwise they will, die as a culture or destroy themselves as a culture. Sometime before that, exceptional souls embark on the journey of a fictitious probe. They probe it in a novel, like Sancho Panza and Don Quixote probed the end of the Middle Age romance, knighthood tales, to come to terms with reality. So sometimes I was thinking like the Sophia and Gaia theory of John Lash may be another kind of fiction that is necessary, and it will help us to come over the threshold of this paradigm of self-destruction. But I will come, what we have to speak about is this entity X and your achrons, which is a central point, a similarity between your theory and the theory of Ludwig Klages is that they are acosmic, that they are, in your phase, they are from beyond the earth, they are from living in the rest of the solar system, they are existing, they are not living, they are existing in the rest of the solar system, and they are a necessary byproduct of this embodiment of the Gaia Mother Sophia Soul software into the planetary body of the Earth. There is a kind of repercussion, side waves, side currents in the metaphysical realm of cosmos, or in the energy realm of cosmos, which we do not understand, and the effect of it is the creation of the arousal, or the materialization, or the becoming of achrons. Okay, then in your theory there is a jump, and they become as viruses effective in the human soul field, and they simply turn it, misuse it parasitically to become basically an enemy of life. In the theory of Ludwig Klages, I think it is more logical. It says the entity X, he doesn't have a name for it, because it is acosmic in his conception. So it cannot be named, even because all we name is from this cosmos. This acosmic quality is not nameable. interestingly enough, I was analyzing at the close of my studies at the University of Konstanz the trilogy of Samuel Beckett, literary criticism of Samuel Beckett. Molloy Dies, The Unnameable was the third part. Molloy, second part, Molloy Dies, The Unnameable. At that time I was totally overpowered by the consequences which came out of that if I wanted to understand it. And Professor Wolfgang Iser told me, you don't need to do that. You want to find the final solution. You should simply write what other people write about it, and that's it. You will get your title, Magister, University Literary Scientist. But I was always like you. I wanted to know really. And at the time I was a Buddhist. I was a member of a Theravada Buddhist school here in Germany and Switzerland. And we had really exceptional teachers. Jnana Ponika, the first German who migrated to Sri Lanka in the 20s of the last century. He was also a serious searcher. He became abbot of a Buddhist monastery and wrote scientific text about the Buddhist, system, phenomenological and psychological and religious. And a later friend of mine, Dr. Mikro Friba, who was a Czech, as I am, my origin is Czech from Prague. Terence McKenna likes Prague, is a center of Gnostic secret. But I don't live there. I live at the lakes and in the mountains and in Crete and rivers and so tennis and skiing and because I need my time for diving deep into this inspirations of a new paradigm. So another friend of mine, Dr. Mirko Friba, was also a Czech. He was a psychiatrist, and he worked in Zurich, here in Switzerland. As a psychiatrist for psychiatrists. He was the supervision psychiatrist, because psychiatrists they may get crazy even themselves, and they project then their madness into all the patients they hear. Because this is terrible to hear the whole day some fantastic stories of mad people. They don't follow Nietzsche's advice. Nietzsche's advice is for the healers, for the strong ones, to separate completely from the ill ones. Because who's going to bring the torch of life forward if all the best minds exhaust themselves by treating the mad ones? No? So nevertheless, he was a psychiatrist for psychiatrists because he was a Buddhist, and he has this idea of loving all the being and helping all the being for enlightenment. And there was a Buddhist seminar where he was a teacher here, and incidentally he became an assistant of the older Jnana Ponika, of the German Buddhist abbot on Sri Lanka, and he brought also the Theravada vision, full power here. We have studied the only time where Buddhism as a science was studied at the German university. You can imagine in the 80s, where the German intellectual culture really culminated after 300-400 years of idealism and study, all the Kants and Schellings and Schopenhauers and Nietzsche's and Kants, but condensed into the 1980s theory of Wolfgang Iser, the phenomenology of reading. It was anthropology, which answered the question, why do we read? Why do we need the realm of fiction on the threshold of a paradigm to try it, what it would be to live in a different paradigm? We do it in a book. This is the European way. In the fiction, we can try it. Né? And then there was phenomenology. Very difficult task to follow the soul of the reader of a book, what happens really inside it. I mean, very, very difficult. And then there was a structural component to look at the structure of the work of art and say, well, this is the intention of the author, of the writer. He make a structure of in the work like a kind of riverbeds where the images and the emotions and the ideas and the memories and the fantasies of the reader should flow inside this maze or inside this riverbed structure, which is made of chapters and personages and perspectives and language selection and whatever you want, and epoch and time from which it is selected. Reality is selected and combined. The historical reality of human history is selected. Certain parts are selected, they are recombined, and they are put into a structure so that then the images and the memories and the cognition of the reader will flow in this artificial structure, and then a world will be created that will enable the reader to go through cognitive and emotional processes that will prepare him to live in the new paradigm. And that time Buddhism was here. Very strongly I studied Theravada and I achieved certain level of enlightenment, and I was fascinated by Zen, and I found out that what is, I mean, when I studied Theravada, I didn't listen to just the teachers. I was reading Abhidhamma, which is the academic level course of, let us say, of phenomenology, of Buddhist phenomenology. Yeah. Okay, Paticcasamuppada. Okay. The cause of the ring, the wheel of conditioned becoming, and Visuddhimagga, the exact manual to those abstruse and fantastic kinds of concentrations on the material substance of this world to overcome it. And then I came to Zen as a more freer approach, and I have found out that what happens in Zen meditation is also the overcoming of all valid paradigms. It is in a way a practical phenomenological re-evaluation of all values, according to Nietzsche, but it stops in the moment when the re-evaluation is achieved, that is, the values that you are upholding are dissolved, and then there are no values, no evaluation. What happens is then the pure reality, in the sense of phenomena flowing. The river is the rivering, the wind is blowing, the sun is shining, the ground is pushing against your body, the smells are coming, the sounds are coming, but nobody is there to evaluate it. And I dare to say, this is Mother Sophia Gaia touching you in the beyond the human interpretation as much as it is possible for an animal, as you say correctly. A human animal has a certain organs of perception, certain body, and he can not perceive like a worm, like an eagle, like a tiger. So with his body and with his soul, with his nervous system, the purest greeting and touching and message of the Mother Sophia Gaia is in the Zen Satori. Okay. Well, out of the Zen Satori, no intellectual gnosis will come. As Nietzsche says, we come down from the ladder of seeing through all metaphysics. We must embrace a new metaphysics, a new fiction of medium range validity, and then we enjoy it. But again, we are already grown up, so seekers. We come even from this ecstasy of Zen, Satori, or whatever, and then we have our intellect to explain it. But we use names, we use words, as I've said at the beginning, that name our experiences. We do not fantasize in abstract concepts about what we have read somewhere or what our teacher has said and what our institution asks for us to repeat so that we shall be accepted as, members of the institution and will get our money. So I have found by naming my experiences in Zen that there is a similarity to Samuel Beckett approach in which he, as a postmodern work of art, simply does not satisfy the reader. We have been reading thousands of years, at least the intellectual human being, and they expect something, that the work has a meaning, yes? And that if you describe a scene, that it is spatially logical. And if there are characters, that they, represent a certain worldview, and they act and they counteract, but they somehow keep their stability. But all this is dissolved in a postmodern novel. So the reader has the choice to throw it away, says it's bullshit, doesn't make sense, or he can be an exceptional reader like Krishnamurti listener and says, wait a minute, I am not here to find meaning. I am here to observe my desire to find meaning in everything what I experience, because like that I will discover these routines in which I'm living. I will transcend them. I will come out of the paradigm because I will stop this desire to understand. I know that it's not bad to understand, but the art and the way in which I was understanding until now doesn't seem to make me healthy. I don't even say happy. doesn't seem to make me healthy. So I have to stop thinking like that and understanding like that. And how can I do it? I must first notice that I have a desire and must understand in the old way. So first, this all will be dissolved like in Zen, and also to a certain extent also in Theravada meditation. And then there is an open reality, experience, purely phenomenal. Okay, and now we come to the chase. Let's make a pause. So, even if Mr. Lash, even if your Gaia Sophia theory would be a fiction of a medium duration of validity, it would nevertheless be welcome and valid for the transition into a new paradigm. What it will be, we do not know. Because we do not have a telos. No? That's why we like your metaphysical presupposition that even Sophia Gaia herself does not have a telos. So that it is a kind of ongoing Gnostic experiment. Now let's get some of the other presuppositions we have from our perspective of biocentric phenomenology clear. So in Ludwig Klages, the entity X, which is functionally the same as your achrons, is not created because does not arise better by the materialization of Sophia Gaia into the planet Earth, the morphing as you call it. It simply attacks the universe. It's a larger scale. It's a larger scale. The entity X, which cannot be described only by its effects, that's why it is a phenomenological approach. We do not know what it is ontologically, but we can watch it in its effects, and that is phenomenology. It attacks, according to Klages, from a cosmos, which is the Greek preposition a, means negative, so it is not our cosmos. So where it is from, maybe alternative cosmos. It attacks this cosmos and it remains dormant. This is my own interpretation from his work and from my own research. It becomes dormant in the whole cosmos. It is spread through the whole cosmos. But it does not have a possibility to interfere into the matter. That would be similar to your idea that the genome that Mother Sophia Gaia has created in the pleroma and projected then with herself to the planet Earth cannot be manipulated with by human beings, which is very good. What they manipulate is only the hardware, the expression of the software. So that's why I agree with you completely that artificial intelligence is not possible, because there is no soul in the machine. What they manipulate are signals. And I tell you again, they are not linguists. All these dreamers of artificial intelligence didn't study linguistics, dissociate the sign and the signified. Completely, they would immediately see that the sign is the signal, is the change in the material medium of the neurons, okay, or of any machine that is transmitting signals. Signals are always changes of the material medium. But the meaning of a sign, of a signal, is a completely different ontological category. It is never to be found by analyzing the material signals. It is constituted in the soul of the receiver, which is stupid, of the organism, whose body is equipped through evolution with this nervous system, which can transfer certain kind of signals and change them from one material medium to the other. Like in hearing, you have acoustic, pressure waves, then you have mechanic transfer in the inner ear from the little bones, and then you have liquid transfer in the human ear, and then you have transfer to the little hairs that get moved by the water, and then they change this motion into electromagnetic signals, that it goes into the nerves, goes on, and then it disappears in the acoustic cortex. That's the last you can measure, and then there is a black box. Nobody knows, or nobody will ever know. This is a categorical truth, because then the signal loses itself, and the wonder happens that the meaning is constituted in the soul of the being, be it an animal or a man or a plant, of the organism, and this is not measurable. Okay, so we know that if they create an artificial computing, even slightly jelly-like, silicon-like, whatever, replica of a nervous system, it will be just a model, and they feed to it signals that they have registered from some other little living human being brain, well, nothing happens, because the signals will, exist, function, and transform as long as they feed energy into this brain. But there will be no meaning, because there will be no realm of the soul to constitute it. And the confusion of signal and the meaning of a signal is at the core of all the delusion of artificial intelligence. Okay, so forget it. No? And they don't want to forget it, the all kinds of Kurzweils and all the transhumanists, because they are not only wrong, but they are also mad, according to Nietzsche, and they will better kill life than to accept they do not understand it. That's the envy. It is the basic resentment of those who are excluded from life, according to Klages' very powerful word, Lebensausgeschlossenheit. Terrible German word, means being excluded from life by what we call a morphogenetic field repulsion. Now let's cut to the chase and give you my interpretation of it all, which is this is the merging of Ludwig Klages, biocentric phenomenology, Friedrich Nietzsche, a re-evaluation of all values, Rupert Sheldrake, morphogenetic field, theory of morphogenesis, and some parts from Rudolf Steiner and Krishnamurti and Terence McKenna and Bachhofen, and the admiration for Minoan culture. So, okay. Where do we start? We start with the entity X. The entity X, in the Klagesian terms, is spread through all cosmos as an enemy, as an acosmic entity. But it cannot affect matter. It can affect, as it is a kind of software, acosmic software, it can affect only a similar entity, which should be the cosmic software. But it can, that you now speculate, influenced by you, it cannot affect the pleroma. There, the power of the cosmic software of the aeons is so strong that this acosmic software has no chance. So it has to wait like an enemy hiding for a weaker part of the cosmic software. And the weakest part of the cosmic software is the software of the individual organism on some planet. The seas and the lakes and the mountains and the planets, like as elementary conglomerates, speaking with Albert North Whitehead, are also alive. A big organism. Whitehead has only big organism. We have also to mention Whitehead. Okay, big organisms are the woods and the lakes and the continents and the planets. Small organisms are those closed in a shell like plants, animals, and man, individual. And what do I want to say? Okay, they have a soul. The big organisms have a soul. A sea has a soul. Mountains have a soul. But they are not, it's not possible to attack them for the entity X, because their, let us say, soul software is very, very simple, but very, very powerful. It is like you would like to enter a rock. You cannot do it. You cannot do it. A parasite cannot enter a rock if it is just simply a software. So they wait, and then the individual organisms arise in the evolution of the planet. Well, they do not wait. They are, in a certain sense, mechanic, in the sense that they can only react. And they do not have an individual kind of center. They are, like you say, a robotic. The insect-like metaphor is also true, but also dangerous, because it can lead to all kinds of imagination that they are like insects. No, the insect-like metaphor means that they are not, in the sense, individual as man. They are a hive, but mechanic, kind of software parasite without a body. And when on a certain planet, any planet in the cosmos, an organism is living due to the evolutionary chain that has a very complicated nervous system, and the constitution of the image and of the meaning of the external world becomes very sophisticated, so that it is slowed down. This is a very important point. Animals and plants live in continuous presence. They don't reflect. They don't have a problem with anything. They are a hive also. They are a morphogenetic type. All tigers are tigerish, not? They experience certainly individually, but they are much, much close to the type than to the individual. Dogs and cats and horses that live with man are influenced by our individual soul, so their character becomes also individual. But man becomes so complicated at certain development of his species that simply to constitute phenomenologically the model and the image and the meaning of the external world, the constitution slows down. It is not immediate reflection. I have introduced into the vocabulary of biocentric phenomenology the concept of the soul mirror. So the soul mirror in animals is mirroring continuously, that's enough. There's not very much to mirror. It's enough to mirror it and to react on it. The human mirror of the soul becomes so vast because the transition of animal to man is not due to some mechanic expertise in his joints, and he can get hold of an object and use it as a tool. No, Homo habilis is not our approach. It is because his soul field has a larger capacity to expand in time and space than the soul field of an individual animal. So expansion in time and space of the soul field means what? No, means memory and imagination. And by that, he can remember what he did, and he can imagine what he could do, and like that, his ability to manipulate nature and objects in nature arose. Okay. But the price is that it's going slower. He cannot simply react like animals. He has to stop and manipulate. And slowly, this conception of the image of the outside world and what the meaning of it was slowed so much down that an entity X, whose essence is, let us say, reduction, slowing down, freezing, has entered the, now we come very specific, we use the term of Husserl, a great phenomenologist. Husserl speaks about the constitution of the image of the world, of the meaning of the world, in the so-called present moment. He enlarges the present moment. This is the expansion of the soul field in the so-called protensions, which are short images of the future. Because you have experienced that if you throw a stone, it will fall down. So before you even throw the stone, you already expected that it will happen so you imagine it. And when it happens, the stone is falling, you keep the slides, so to say, your eye, let us say, to reduce it on the optic, the eye keeps the individual images in the mirror of the souls and keeps them so long so that they create a sequence, like in a cinema, like it is moving, and you see what he calls retention. So something is kept, which already is in the past, and something is drawn into the present moment, which is in the imaginary future. So from this imaginary future and remembered past, there where they intersect and join, the moment of present is constituted in all organisms. No, only with animals and plants, it's rather short and simple. With the human beings, it doesn't, short and simple is, planets are much more in touch with the plants than with man, for example. That's why planets follow the cosmic cycle and they even turn their heads to the sun. Flowers. But it is not because their soul field is so large that they touch the soul field of the sun or the star. It's the other way around. The soul field, or we could say the gravitational field or the etheric field, of the planets and the sun are so huge that they reach the plants. They penetrate the whole planet. That's why planets answer. They penetrate also through the human soul, but we have closed ourselves to this planetary phenomena. Okay, the entity X, this virus, enters into the soul field in the moment of retention. You can imagine it that there is a mirror in the soul which is constantly turning back and forward, back and forward, back and forward. Back it must turn to keep that which is slipping into the past, to retain it in the retention inside the mirror, and forward it must reflect that which is becoming the present. But the present is not becoming by flowing from the future into the present moment. No, it is becoming because it is growing. It is growing from the past into the present moment. So, and out of this retention and projection, and the present moment is constituted, and inside patch the pebble, what we could say, of this virus is drawn in. Let us say this is not again an intentional act of some evil spirit. It is simply a kind of necessary, this is complying with Nietzsche, necessary happening which happens while the slowing down of the rotation of the mirror of the soul somehow has similar components as the waiting, immobile, static virus. Well, we can have some license of a poetic jump, as Nietzsche says. All philosophers start to talk around and talk about what the other guy has said, and then they close their eyes and jump, and they make some premises. These are the necessary errors that will make the system work. Okay. So we make this necessary jump, and the virus is inside the morphogenic future soul. You imagine, as I have had in some other lectures, a river, mountain brook, something clear and transparent is flowing. You throw a stone inside, and then disturbances arouse, even during the moment of the falling through water. First bubbles, and then some the ground of the brook is being hit by the pebble, and dust arises, and the water that flows through makes it into quite smoky shapes. And so these are all derivations and functional changes in the flow of the water. That is how we interpret all cognitive functions. First, the moment of the hit, the first trace of the pebble in the water is the ego. Because ego is basically slowing down. Reflect your ego, and you will realize it is all the time the same. What changes is your character, your body and your soul, and your area where you live, your surroundings. You get older, but the ego is always the same. The soul is changes, your character changes, but ego, the reflective center of cognitive reflection, not the soul mirror, but the ego is all the same. The soul mirror is mirroring according to your age. If you get older, you don't see everything as what you have seen as a young man. Okay. And then this ego creates immediately the difference between I and the object, that we know this already. So the projection of the ego into objects and of the external world, then it reflects on itself, it becomes self-consciousness. That's why we have a sharp differentiation between consciousness and self-consciousness on the one side. For us belong to the realm of the ego as derivation of the soul field, and on the other side we have a life-supporting mirror of the soul and ecstatic experience of the world which is not conscious and it is not self-conscious in those analytical terms. So we have these derivations, and then we have the next disturbance of the soul field is the personal, egoistic, objectifying perception. We have already defined it, which makes the frozen things out of the flux of phenomena, of experiences. And then we have, if you adjust it for thinking, then you have personal, egoistic, conceptualized thinking. This is what we have introduced at the beginning by labeling the experience with the words that signify concepts, abstract concepts. So this all is a machinery of cognition which it is very difficult to see through and then use as a intelligent, intelligent Gnostic, to use it in the interest of life. That is, you keep that wisdom that you have and knowledge which you have achieved by studying universities, books and discussions, whatever, but you do not permit that this congeals into a solid conceptual model that you will force onto all experience, motivated by power and by desire, egoistic desire, and by some maybe uncleared and not understood human animal instincts. So most of the politicians and power people and military people are either animals who do not understand their instinct, but they nevertheless have inherited education and the human capacity for cognitive thinking, and they misuse their human cognitive thinking to serve the animal instincts. This would be the animal type evil man. And then we have those decadent, which are more terrible. These decadent types that are excluded from life, who use intentionally, that's why it is worse, their cognitive power to deceive and to make schemes and to invent lies and to manipulate. But nevertheless, you have to say all of them act in the interest of, according to Nietzsche, life, of preserving the individual life form. But when it comes to destruction of the planets, after a long time, when the virus has infected the soul of so many scientists, philosophers, politicians, and religious teachers, that they openly proclaim a life-hating practice and openly work on projects that will destroy the planet by manipulating, misunderstanding and manipulating the misunderstood residuum which they proclaim is the scientific model of matter, they have violated the matter, the mother, the mater, and they have made it to material that can be, like the English empirist founders, Francis Bacon, put the material that they have taken out, if they were ripped out of the body of the mother, they will put it into their laboratory and they will burn it and put it under great pressure and send some radiation on it. And so this is actually a torture of the body of the mother. And then they will reproduce weapons, energetic conglomerates out of it, that can even destroy the matter completely. They have misunderstood it, they have reduced the model of it, and they nevertheless can make a technology. And the making of technology, according to these mistakes, motivated by a decadent, life-hating organism, even if it misunderstood even itself, because it is driven by the fear of death and imagines that by understanding matter and life, it can prolong its individual life, which is a mistake, naturally. The renewal of life, of organismic life on planets, is possible only when old pieces, let us say, of that organismic type die or wane or wither, because in the new generation you can start again. A new generation is always beautiful and fresh and happy, because it does not have the ego, especially in the human race. Old egoists are terrible to look at. They are frozen, dry, without happiness and pleasure. They do not dance and do not laugh. They simply keep on living, taking pills and various operations, and they crawl into the laboratories and say, now we shall find the secret. The Gnostic, in the wrong way, understood gnosis means I will find a formula, a secret hidden formula, a magic, a kind of black magic formula, and when I say it, it will make wonders, and I will become like gods, okay, immortal and living forever and powerful. The modern science is similar to that. They are searching for the secret mathematical formula, but it became so complicated that they lose hope, because there are so many transition steps between what they try to do in the laboratories and chalk with which they try to conceptualize it on the blackboard or on the computer. So this is it. And the Sophia correction, or the Klagesian unexpected, unpreconceived processes in the depths of the earth, and my own love for the sun and its kind of loving touch on the leaves of all trees, and this sparkling mosaics of sun when it runs on the ground of a shore, when the light is broken by water. It reminds me of the Orphic story that Apollo, the sun god, has created human race on planet Earth, know who knows that. By catching the sunlight on the vibrating string of his lyre and modulating them into a light matrix, which then was filled by the elementary substances of Mother Gaia. So we have, now I have it. Now this is, as you rightly say, it's an ongoing Gnostic process. Ongoingly we are given images by Mother Gaia. You have talked about her consort, or about the Aeon, Teletos, or I don't remember the name exactly. So she would be the yin, and there would be the yang component. And normally these two Aeons would work together in creating a software for another planet or life in the cosmos, in the galaxy. According to your story, Sophia was impatient, but in the positive way. But impatience sometimes is necessary to start the new paradigm. You have to jump in and swim. You cannot stay on the shore and read the books about the physiological processes and physical processes that happen when you move your hands and arms, and the result is that you stay on the surface of the sea. Well, you can do it sometime, but then one day you have to jump, or better to walk on a nice shore and try to swim, like, you can still stand. So, as I've seen Sophia, and as she showed me herself in this type of a girl, of a kind of wild, hippie, adventurous girl, she was impatient. She jumped in. Sometimes she can burn herself, but sometimes she can experience something really good and new. So you don't say anymore about her consort. Did he stay in the pleroma, or did he somehow follow her? Maybe he could be a software of the sun, because we know, you say the Acrons, they live on other planets, but they don't live on the sun, I guess. And sun is connected with Apollo. And so Apollo could be a manifestation of this Teletos, or what you call him. And because I love the sun so much, I say the creation of man in the Apollonian Orphic story is naturally much more beautiful and fascinating than the biblical patriarchal creation of man out of mud of the earth. And he becomes dust, which is the warning, and the kind of terroristic argument that the patriarchal religions have, that all will turn into dust unless you pay for our services, and then we can help you to come to some kind of heaven. If you do not, then you become to hell, that terroristic kind of oppressing. Whereas with the Apollonian story, let's get to the Apollonian story more. Light coming from the sun is polychromatic light. It is a kind of mixture of wavelengths. That's why we see colors, because the objects, material stuff of the planet reflects the photons, and always in a kind of different way according to its substance, to its surface substances, and then it hits our eye, already selected, the wavelengths are selected, and so we shall interpret them, which is again a great mystery, like colors. But the harp, or the lyre of Apollo, what does it do with the light? Yeah, it changes its frequency, its vibration. Let us suppose so. I don't know if it is possible by in physical terms, but this is a myth, no? So it's symbols. So let's jump from the symbols to ontology. The ontology says the polychromatic light is transferred or transformed by the vibration, by the acoustic vibration of the strings into a monochromatic light, into a laser light, into a light quantum. Quanta are energy bursts of the same frequency, monochromatic light. And such are the qualities of a monochromatic light, laser light, that it can transfer information. Because if the quanta are the same, then the frequency and the length and whatever, it's like a Morse alphabet. It is the sounds of the Morse alphabet are various lengths and various repetition, and this can be made to a code, okay? And it can transfer information. This Apollonian light transformation into a laser light and into a spatial, we could say directly into some spatial matrix, and I'd say directly morphogenetic field, will then draw to itself and to its component parts elements of the planet Earth, so that functioning organism will be constituted inside this light matrix, inside the soul field. You have a morphogenetic soul field full of light. So maybe you can have it in one, because you say a pleroma of Gaia, Mother Sophia, is white light. So the Orphic story of Apollo can be a kind of variation of this white light of Mother Sophia. Nevertheless, when the organism runs its course as an individual organism, fades, because it has accumulated a lot of mistakes, especially the human organism, accumulate a lot of mistakes because the ego is a price we pay for intellect, and we have to have it, because the creation of conceptual models of the external reality is that what make our civilization possible. It made it also dangerous, and it may also destroy it. The errors of Nietzsche, the necessary errors, get more dangerous and more dangerous with time, basically because the technology that we construct on the basis of such models are more destructive at the final stages of civilizations. But nevertheless, without this ability to represent the phenomenal experience in models, first with symbols, shouts, then with signs, then with pictorial signs, then with alphabetic signs, then with linguistic systems, then with mathematical systems. And so civilizations are arising on the various planets. So there must always be an animal that is, in a way, complicated, different from all other animals and plants. It's not governed completely by instincts. It comes, a thesis of Helmut Plessner, a German anthropologist, who would say simply, basically, human culture arose because the naked ape was basically not equipped. It was a failure of evolution. It's a completely different story that the beautiful mother Sophia created the planet and watching the experiment. Well, maybe it's not so different. So in Plessner's idea, the human being is a kind of naked animal that is unable to survive. His equipment is not sufficient. He cannot fly away, he cannot run away, he cannot fight with teeth and and so. So he is forced actually to hide in caves and slowly to invent science and philosophy and religion to conquer all other animals. And this is what he had done because he was a failure, evolutionary failure. Well, it's also one theory. We say now that we suppose this process happening on many planets. We can say it because we have a special source of information. As we have hinted in, we have been taken by Sophia on a ride on the road to cosmic center, to galactic center, and on the road I have seen planets that were dead because they didn't make a successful step over the threshold of any civilization. That is, the representation models got so complex and so full of mistakes that the technology they created according to them destroyed the whole biosphere. And they are dead planets. And unfortunately, I must say, I felt that this is the default solution in the galaxy. According to Mr. Lash, your model, the eons, projects these possible germs, these civilization seeds, that over several steps they settle on certain planets, and then they simply follow it, what happened, and they do not interfere. And the default solution is civilization and downfall of civilization, because the price for civilization is representation. Animals must represent their phenomenal experience to create a civilization. At the end, the same quality which enabled the civilization to arise will destroy it because the mistakes accumulate. Necessary mistake, according to Nietzsche. A technology built on that destroys matter and destroys life. Atomic bomb and genetic manipulation. The escape of transhumanism is the last kind of false hope arising from not understanding such basic differences, like the difference between signal and the meaning of a signal. And not understanding the necessity of mistakes in conceptual models, because again arising from the very simple difference between phenomena and concepts. An old story in philosophy. So, in your model, Mr. Lash, the loving act of Mother Gaia Sophia to form, to become the planet Earth, may be itself on the cosmic scale a paradigm change. Because so far, you make like humoristically looking at the aeons from my philosophical mattress with the guitar 2023, I can say, well, you have tried this for a long time. Past time for you, being bored in the pleroma, projecting all kinds of civilization seeds into the cosmos, and then watching it develop and destroy itself now, and over and over. Well, we cannot judge the aeons, but Sophia, the aeon, maybe saw, this is not going nowhere. I have to do something. I have to become that what I'm creating, what I'm impulsing. And so she merged with the earth. And that enough remained from a scientific spirit in her that she does not have a telos. She didn't predetermine the end. And so we are in it. We are now co-creating. I have introduced the concept of Apollo and the sun and the entity X. I have introduced the concept that all cognitive functions are variations and transformation of the morphogenetic field of the soul. And so the 3,000-year-old confusion of the concept soul, spirit, body, mind, consciousness, and so on can be seen through when we say there is one unity of life. There's a bipolar unity. Life has two poles: soul, morphogenetic field of the soul, and the living body. And they influence each other very much in the yin and yang way. There is bipolar unity, means not an equal all the time. They are not equal all the time. There is a domination. Sometimes, according to the cycle of the moon, the stars, the planets, the cosmos, and the individual organism, soul is stronger now, and you have psychosomatic effect. Sometimes, when it changes, when the dominance of the soul becomes too much, like in yin and yang symbol, it turns over and the body starts to grow stronger. Like if you have been talking like an idiot here on the mattress for 3 hours, you feel now it's enough, I have to go to play tennis. Unfortunately, I have a game of tennis today. It's a tournament, so I will see what happens. So, okay. What I was talking about? Yeah, co-creative. We are co-creative. I have introduced these new concepts into the model of Ludwig Klages, Nietzsche, Krishnamurti, Rudolf Steiner, John Lash, Terence McKenna, and others. And beware, they are all names I gave to my own experiences. They are not concepts, they are not signs, labels, which I use to designate certain theoretical concepts that I have read somewhere. I have also introduced a great tolerance to all what is happening, as Nietzsche did, because it is a madhouse on this planet. Only if the mad break through the walls of the clinic and start to destroy life, we have to call police. No? And we have to call Mother Sophia Gaia and Apollo and other aeons to stop that. Okay. And I hope it will be done humanely. That is, they will come to reason, or the evil ones, or the enemy of life, and they will say, yes, finally we understand that we are mad. We should not be strong against the others who are healthy. We should not hate them. Well, if it is possible, then it will be done like that. If it is not possible, then Gaia, the mother, will simply withdraw the body, because she is the incarnation of the pleroma soul, white light. She is the incarnation of it. And if she loves life, then not because she wants to make some, glorious victory, but like a mother who feeds the children and plays with it and, removes all the angry relatives and some of the dangerous stuff from the near area of the child. She will remove all those life enemies. And my personal vision is that it will be simply like, the body will be taken away and melted again in the furnace of the Mother Gaia for a new evolutionary process. And what does it mean, the body will be taken away? Well, we don't know. Maybe some diseases will stop the life of individual organisms of human type, or they will spontaneously combust, as it happens already, or they will disintegrate. There is one phenomenological specialty I also have proposed. The willpower, the egoistic willpower, is always intentional ray of conscious, let us say, energy, power that is directly like a gunshot into the internal or the external phenomena to hit it, stop it, reduce it, immobilize it, and recognize it. Conceptual recognition or cognition is at the same time projection of the ego in this ray, and at the same time freezing of the phenomena that flow, and like that creating an object that can be labeled with a concept later. So I turn back into this moment of the ray of conscious intentional energy. Husserl has recognized this. Consciousness is always intentional and always one after the another. You can be analytically conscious only of one object and then another and then another. Whereas the mirror of the soul as a morphogenetic field can, take in and mirror, that is, you can experience the whole scene of a lake, the skies, the trees, the birds, the smells, and you can enjoy it. This is not analytical consciousness. Beware, beware. The mystics, the artists, children, and all creative people live with an open mirror of the soul. They are not So this is the difference, ontological difference between the directed ray beam of intentional conscious energy, which, according to so far what was said, is a parasitic functions in the soul field. And we have suggested to Sophia, with the help of Apollo, that she can mastermind a little bit in the secret kitchen, because women like to cook secret food, okay, that she could change the ontology of the software field of the planet Earth. That means she would have to change her body also. But maybe it is the task of the artist to weave new clothes from the beloved, for the beautiful girl and woman they adore in their poetry. Poesis is creation also. It is not techne. Techne is materialization of conceptual plans, matrices, where poetry is co-creative poesis. So we weave a new tapestry, new clothes for the mother and for the lover and for our daughter. And this is it. In it we have an image in this tapestry, that the ray of intentional energy of human consciousness, which naturally, according to John Lash, terminology is achronic, parasitic activity in the human brain. And in our Klagesian terminology, it is transformatic function in the morphogenetic field of the soul, caused by the invasion of the entity X, a cosmic entity. So this ray of intentional energy directed from the ego, in case it is destructive, this we leave to Mother Gaia to make the fine scaling of the change, in her body. In case it is bent on destruction, will immediately reflect. She will simply put a little bit of some soul mirror of her garment on the target of this consciousness, or on the way into the way of this beam of destructive consciousness intentional ray, and this will reflect because it's a mirror, and it will reflect in the way that it burns the agent, the origin of this will be burned by doubling or tripling, whatever, the energy of it. And that's why the ego will, there will be a universal lobotomy for all evil destroyers. The ego will stop functioning and they will become vegetables. Pleasant old guys sitting in front of the houses and just laughing friendly, like enlightened Zen masters, but without an ego permanently. Well, maybe some of them have such an evil character, character is the soul and the body. Remember that. Character is the soul and the body. We all have different souls and bodies because we are different flowers on very different or similar but individual trees of certain families and nations and so on, and in different nature surroundings. So this is our character, the quality of the morphogenetic field of the soul and the body. What we eat in this nature and so on, what we play for games and so on and so on. The habitus. But the ego, germ, this achron, virus, the virus X, which hits the soul field, is always, we have now difficulty in language, we cannot say always the same, because, well, could be said, no? It is the same quality which differently influences different souls and different bodies, but its functions is the same. So it is the same. Maybe it could be only one and replicated in its function identically. So when it will be destroyed in one egoistic consciousness by this reflection of the beam, of the destructive beam, will be burned down, disintegrated. So the question arises, will all egos stop functioning? Or will this repeat itself like necessarily, always, originally new? Okay. And this will be the new paradise on earth. This will be the new beauty to come. As John Lash says, when the Achron's influence will be overcome by Sophia correction. Well, have a nice day. Listen to this. I mean, stupid. I'm becoming conventional. Well, listen to this. You have listened already. And let me know if you want this to be published. And as far as the story about my travel to the center of the galaxy in the arms of the Great Mother, I keep it only for our personal conversation.